The Reform Party, as a longtime champion of the American worker, has to a great extent opposed jobs outsourcing and free trade agreements. What would you do to ensure that more American jobs are created and that the ones lost overseas are brought back home? Mr. Barnett.
Well, again, like I said before, let's lower that corporate tax rate. Let's create that tax haven. Let's create that environment for job growth to thrive here in the U.S. Let's get people back to work. The way that we're going to look at bringing jobs back, again, that pre-negotiation with corporations, telling them, we're going to give you the benefit here. We're going to give you that 9% if you'll help out here. Bring your jobs back, Get people health care and get enrolled here. We're going to actually let you bring all your funds back. And that's something that most of these corporations don't want to do. They don't want to bring their money back to the U.S. soil because they're going to have a huge tax on it. Well, free repatriation of your funds back into the U.S. That's perfectly fine, but with strings attached. You're not going to actually give that to your bigwigs, your CEOs, or your executives. You're going to have to invest that again, reinvest it into this country's infrastructure, into our economics. We cannot sustain corporations coming back and saying, well, you guys are going to let us have free will here? We're going to do whatever we want? No, we've got to keep everything under control. But at the same time, we have to create an environment for it to thrive and to grow. So creating that environment does not stipulate that the government is going to place regulations on all of these companies and on how they do business. Now, we do have to look at how they're going to conduct themselves within the guidelines of the Constitution. But we don't have to regulate business itself. I don't think that's what we had in mind when we framed this country. I just don't think it is.
Mr. Cross.
The problem is not that corporations are paying too little. They talk about a 35% income tax rate. Nobody really pays that. Many of them make $62 billion a year and pay negative tax. The way the laws are, they pay too little now. So the idea isn't lower their corporate tax rates to give them more money so that they can sit on it and have higher wages and give more to their stockholders. You only give them money if they put somebody to work. That's my plan. My plan will put 4 million people to work within a year, and it cost a tenth of Obama's economic stimulus plan. What you do is, if a business hires someone at the level that I'm talking about, they hire them, they do withholding of payroll taxes and income taxes, and then at the end of the month, they send that bill to the state reimburses them, and the state gets reimbursed by the federal government for a tenth of the cost of the stimulus act by Obama, which provided money, again, to corporations. Even the lowest element in society, not the high corporations, the lower businesses, said at a round table where the guy came in and said, well, Obama just bought me a new van because of the accelerated depreciation. He said, well, are you hiring more people? No, I don't need more people. Economy's slow, I may lay somebody off. Pouring money into businesses indirectly, hoping that it gives people jobs, doesn't work. Making the condition that they'll get the money when they hire somebody will work.
Mr. Chlapowski.
I think when we look at the World Trade Organization and where we've gone as a country is that we've given away our ability to control our economy and manufacturing and delegated it to a committee outside the government. And so even though these agreements, quote, have to have the approval of the Senate and all, we saw that a number of them have just recently gone through. And what we know is we negotiate horrible free trade agreements. And so I propose an overarching control which is related to our balance of trade. And again, it is related to those importing and merchandising, and that is that you tax them as a percentage of their imports as they bring these goods into the country. And so if you have a bad free trade agreement, you have a bad balance of trade, which is $650 billion negative right now, mostly to China. And so in order to fund new jobs and new growth in America, you need to incentivize manufacturing, which are real jobs, which have trickle down and generate many other jobs that needs to occur. And in order to get these corporations to come back, we have a toxic environment in this country. We have EPA that beats people up. We have OSHA that beats people up. And when I was in Europe, what their governments did was they worked with businesses to make them succeed. They did not have groups trying to catch, fine, and take them out of business. So we need a government that's of the people, by the people, and for the people, and not of the government, by the government, and for the government. And when we get these trade agreements, they're self-serving.
Mr. Barnett, 1 minute follow-up.
Okay, a couple things. I agree with you on Europe and actually in Asia. The government does work with companies to cut through the red tape so that they can actually create jobs. Now, the other thing is, I'm not pouring money into corporations. I'm actually stipulating that if you bring the jobs back here, that means you are hiring here American citizens and you're paying for healthcare premiums. That's when you're getting money back. The tax rate is going to stay the same. We've simplified it to the point where you're not going to be able to pay 0. You're going to pay that 9% or 12%. We're going to increase the revenue from corporations, all of them. The second thing is that when we're looking at the trade agreements, there's no such thing as a free trade agreement. That's why I said we've got to be U.S. interest oriented, and we have got to put those tariffs on those goods from countries that are, especially those countries that are placing high tariffs on our exports. We've got to even the playing field for corporations here in the U.S.
Mr. Cross.
We need to have not free trade, we need to have fair trade. There's nothing wrong with the word fair. We had fair before, we need fair again. And that doesn't mean a lot of tariffs, a lot of things that escalate a trade war in the world. Trade is good. Trade is beneficial. We have people who do things very well here, and we export them, and we have people that make things around the world, and we get them as consumers. So trade isn't wrong, but trade that doesn't have stipulations that say the trade will be fair is wrong. I believe that we've gone too far with free trade agreements, that we should have bilateral agreements, and we should take into account when a country like China or somebody else has poor trade practices, that we take special measures with them, but not a trade war.
Mr. Chlapowski.
Again, I think manufacturing is the key type of job that we want to bring back to the country due to the trickle-down effect that has been proven from this. If we have paper-generating people that just deal in paper, this is not really something that helps you relative to balance of trade. And so in order to stimulate manufacturing, I'd again reduce their corporate tax rate to a real 15%. And you could choose to, again, selectively tax those businesses who are importing and hurting the country. Tariffs are counterproductive in that they are balanced with loss of jobs and shuffling.